Well, thanks for joining us on Horizon High School On Demand. And I hope you guys had a great Easter. And I am excited to launch our student speaking series called Trailblazers. So what's really cool is that last week we celebrated Jesus rising from the dead. And in Luke 24, after he rose from the dead, there are two men walking to Emmaus. And Jesus initiates contact with them. He asks them a question and wanted to know their thoughts about what they thought happened in Jerusalem. And this shows yet again that Jesus wants to hear from us, no matter where we're at in our faith journey. So over the next 4 weeks, we're going to be hearing students share some of their stories about how faith is relevant and how God's important to them and part of all of our stories. We're going to first have Casey and Belle share today. And Belle will lead us off with the fun song, Carry On.
Sound of silence, the cars were cutting like knives in a fist fight. And I found you with a bottle of wine, your head in the curtains and heart like the 4th of July. You swore and said we are not shining stars. This I know, I never said we are. Though I've never been through hell like that, I've closed enough windows to know you can never look back. If you're lost and alone, or you're sinking like a stone, yeah, carry on. May your past be the sound of your feet upon the ground, yeah, carry on. Carry on, carry on. So I met up with some friends at the edge of the night, bar off 75. And we talked about how all our parents will die, and our neighbors and wives. Like to think I can cheat it all to make up for the times I've been cheated on. And it's nice to know when I was left for dead, I was found, and now I don't roam these streets. I am not the ghost you want of me. If you're lost and alone, or you're sinking like a stone, yeah, carry on. May your past be the sound of your feet upon the ground, and carry on. If you're lost and alone, or you're sinking like a stone, yeah, carry on. May your past be the sound of your feet upon the ground, and carry on. Carry on, carry on. Alright, everybody. I'm gonna make this quick because this is my 4th take now, because I keep talking too long. Anyways, my name's Belle Gardner. I am a sophomore in high school. I'm 15 years old, and I'm going to share kind of my testimony or my experience with one of the darkest, or the darkest time in my life, and how I got through it with the support of other people, and how God helped me through it. So, real quick backstory. This is kind of a lot, but I'm going to go through it real quick. I really felt anxious and depressed ever since I was a little kid for no reason. I had really bad separation anxiety from like my parents. It was manageable till I was around 13. I started to go to therapy, and that helped a little bit, but not a ton. Things kind of went downhill from there. I started to become suicidal. Around age 14, that's when things became really, really serious. I thought that the only way out of that hopeless, anxious feeling was to end my life, which that isn't at all the right thing to do, or the right frame of mind, but it was all that I could think about at that time. So one therapy appointment, it was with both of my parents, my mom, my dad, and the therapist and me, obviously. And my therapist asked my parents to leave the room for a second. Once they left, he looked me in the eye and he said, "Isabel, are you okay? I know your baseline. I know what you normally act like, and this isn't it." When he said that, I just started bursting out in tears, like loudly sobbing in the middle of this therapist's office. Like tears, like you could see the tears on my shirt. That's how much I was crying. And I just kind of broke down and told him everything that I was feeling. How sad and hopeless and frustrated I was with myself and my brain, and how I hated myself, and how I thought the only escape, the only solution to the problem was to run away from it, to end my life. So he called my parents back in and gave them two options. Either I could go to the hospital, or they could, well, my therapist really trusted my parents. They knew them before, like they were my mom and dad's like marriage counseling or whatever, before they got married. So he knew them very well, and he said either hospital or I could be under 24/7 supervision at my house. So they didn't want me going to the hospital, so they chose the 24/7 supervision at my house. That meant I couldn't sleep alone. I had a camera in my room, plus my mom sleeping on the floor. Couldn't use the bathroom by myself, couldn't take a shower by myself. They went through my whole room and got rid of anything that could be even considered a weapon. Staplers, pencil sharpeners, nail clippers, belts, scarves, like shaving razors, like stuff that you use to shave your legs, necklaces that were too tight. I have this little piece of fabric, you can't see it because it's behind you, but this little piece of fabric that kind of acts as curtains for my window, that was taken away. Everything was taken away. And that was a really dark time in my life, but the psychiatrist that I was seeing put me on some medications, and slowly I began to climb back up to baseline. When I was back at baseline, Isabel, because at this point I hadn't really received a diagnosis. It was emergency time, and they just needed to get me safe before they kind of set anything in stone. So when I was back at baseline, they diagnosed me with dysthymia, which is basically persistent mild depression. So just mild depression that is kind of always there. And a type of OCD called ruminative OCD, which is, if you really boil it down, it's chronic overthinking, but really about washing my hands in germs, fear of getting sick. So I kept going to therapy, did some cognitive behavioral therapy, some immersion therapy. They suggested doing EMDR, but that is kind of scary. I'm not going to explain what that is, but it's just kind of scary. Don't want to do that. So now that I've kind of explained what that dark period looked like, I'm going to tell you some things that helped me. Number one, journaling. Literally keeping a diary, whether that's on the notes app on your phone or on a physical journal. It helps. Taking an abstract thought and putting it into a physical like physical words really helps you sort things out in your mind. Breathing exercises, sleep, eating right and working out, all of those things, just keeping your body physically healthy. It's like you turn into a new person when those things are all aligned. Figure out whether you're an extrovert or an introvert. If you're an extrovert, if you know you're an extrovert, make sure you prioritize time with people, whether that's your family in this time of quarantine where you can only see your family, or FaceTime your friends. If it's just a normal non-quarantine time, make sure to prioritize seeing your friends at school or hanging out after school, or just different things like that. If you know you're an introvert, I am not an introvert, but I'm just going to go off my best guess of what introverts would like. But prioritize some time alone in your room, reading, or take a cat nap for 20 minutes and take some time for some personal reflection and get your energy from there. Because if you don't find out where you get your energy from, you're always going to feel tired. And for me, therapy was really helpful. And therapy will probably be helpful for you too. Everybody can benefit from it, but especially people with psychiatric disorders. It's just helpful to have somebody to bounce your ideas off of, and somebody to tell you that, what you're thinking isn't normal. As kind of hurtful as that sounds, it is helpful to hear it. So kind of bringing everything back to God, since that's what I'm supposed to be talking about. In that time, I thought that I didn't believe in God, but looking back on it now, I realized that it's not that I didn't believe that he existed, it's just I was really angry and frustrated with him that he would allow me to feel this way, feel so hopeless and broken and lonely and frustrated and confused. I was just really angry at him, and I was pushing all of my friends and family away, but the only thing that could help me, I was pushing farthest away, which was God. So when I got back to that baseline out of that emergency situation, I took some simple steps, which seem simple. They're kind of hard to execute, but they seem simple, to help me trust God again. So I'm going to share those steps with you. Obviously, this was what worked in my situation. I'm not promising that it'll work in yours, but feel free to try to use them, because I don't know, they worked for me and they seem to work pretty well. Number one, realize it's okay to be angry with God. Every single person in the Bible has probably been frustrated with God at one point or another. Like even Jesus himself in the Garden of Gethsemane before he was crucified, he was like, God, are you sure that I have to do this? And God said, yeah. He was like, all right, then I'm doing it. That was Jesus that said that. Sorry if I didn't say that. So realize that it's okay to be angry at God and be frustrated with what he's doing, but also recognize that you can be frustrated with him and love him at the same time. Kind of like your sisters or your brothers. You always love them, but every once in a while they really get on your nerves and you can be frustrated with them. Second, figure out why you are angry at God, or why you're not trusting him, or why you're frustrated, or why you're confused. Journaling can really help in this. Like I mentioned earlier, writing him a letter saying, Dear God, or Dear Jesus, and listing out why you're frustrated, or why you're scared, or why you're angry, all that stuff. You can even do that on the Notes app on your phone, or send yourself a text or something. I swear it works. It works wonders. Taking that abstract thought and putting it into words is more helpful than probably anything else in this list of things that I'm talking about. Once you figure out why you're angry at God, find Bible verses or Bible passages that relate specifically to the problem that you're having. So you can look up Bible verses about fear, Bible verses about confusion, Bible verses about depression, Bible verses about anxiety, and just reading one of those every single day can really help. In my situation, the Bible passages that really helped me kind of realize that God has my back were Romans 5 and Romans 12, both of those chapters, 2 Corinthians 11, Isaiah 41, and Jeremiah 32 verses 16 to 44. Those are kind of my all-time favorite, like, go-to Bible verses about trusting God, even when things are kind of going bad. Try to get an easy-to-read version, like the English Standard Version or the American Standard Version, ESV or ASV. Some people really like the Message. I'm not the biggest fan of the Message. Some people like the New King James Version. Just figure out which one you like to read and stick with it. Finally, final step, realize that out of every trial and tribulation is something good. Something good will come out of every single trial and tribulation. What I don't mean is that after every problem you have, there will be sunshine and rainbows and kittens and butterflies. That is not at all what I'm saying. I'm saying there is something that you will learn, something valuable that you will learn, or something valuable that will happen because of the sucky situation. Take Paul, for example. Paul was shipwrecked like 3 times. He was bitten by snakes. He was stoned. He was whipped. He was imprisoned, and nobody believed what he was saying. Everybody thought that he was crazy. But when he talks about these things that happened to him, he talks about them like they are a blessing, which is kind of crazy seeing what happened to him. And he says that the reason that he counts those things as a blessing is because it taught him how to relate to the people he was talking to relate to the people he was teaching to about the Holy Spirit and about God. A more modern situation, being in quarantine, really sucky situation. But you know, the good things that I've been thinking about this a lot, and the good things that are going to come out of this, hospitals are going to have a surplus of respirators, and that's really good. Parents that would normally be at work will be spending time with their kids, which is awesome. And it's bringing families closer together and bringing us closer with God. For me personally, it's making me realize how much I depend on Him to survive. So my challenge for you to think about is think back to a trial or a really hard time in your life. Think of like first breakup or a really hard breakup, or first time you got stage fright, or maybe it was a divorce, or a death in the family, or just a really hard time that sticks out in your life, but in the pretty far past. And think about a good thing that happened because of it. Think about the person you are today because of that event. And think about how, you know, this situation sucks, being in quarantine, not being able to hang out with your friends or your significant other, and being cooped up with your family. That can be really hard. But think about how in the future you're going to look back on this moment and say, whoa, that situation made me a better person, or that situation taught me how to trust God better, or that situation brought me closer to my family. So if you just need any help or have any questions or just need somebody to talk to, I'm always here for you. I love you all. And I hope this helped kind of clear up some problems, or maybe helped you guys learn how to trust God. So, sayonara.
Woo! Good morning, afternoon, good night. I don't know when you're watching this. Anyways, welcome back to day 167. Oh God, of quarantine. I ran out of razors weeks ago, so I don't know what I'm gonna do. Anyways, hey, my name is Casey. I'm a senior at Marymount High School, and today I'm actually gonna share with you one of the sermons that I actually had planned for this past March. It was part of the Catalyst series, which was inspired of a story I'm actually going to tell you today. But Zach helped me with it a whole lot, and I am so thankful for all he's done. Anyways, enough being said. I'm actually gonna let you in on a little bit of a personal story of mine. So this past summer, I went to this camp, Camp Rockmont. I love it to death. It's a Christian camp for boys. There's one for girls as well. Highly recommend those. Anyways, that's not the point of this. So one of the programs that they have there is called Catalyst, which became the basis of the series that I wanted to do with Horizon, as the Catalyst program had a whole lot of inspiration on me. I got inspired through that program, and it had so much good information. The whole point of this series is that there's a whole lot of hard lessons in life that you're going to need to learn in order to become a good person in society. It was more directed at all the boys there, and helped me become the man that I hope to become, and the person that I've become right now. It's helped me kind of realize what I want in life, and help me make like goals and decisions so far. And it's also helped me just kind of like morally figure out who I am, honestly. And in this program, there's this thing called the 5 truths, and it's a lot of those really hard kind of truths in life that you're gonna need to know to help you become a better person. And I'm actually gonna share with you one of my personal favorite ones, which was the one that I was gonna do during the Catalyst series and actually go up and talk. But anyways, that being said, it's the 3rd truth, and it's you are not in control, and that is good news. When I first heard that, I was just like, this is kind of odd, like me not having any control over a situation that's supposed to be good. But the more I thought about it, and the more that I discussed over it with my leaders, it started to make more sense. And granted, I actually had to think about this a little bit more throughout the week as the week progressed, in order to really like have it click for me. In this Catalyst program, we were kind of dragged from camp. We had one day at camp, and then we went on a bus, and then went out to wherever. They didn't tell us where we were gonna go. We just knew that they told us to pack hiking gear. And we ended up hiking the Appalachian Trail for like 2 weeks. We didn't know where we were. We didn't know where we were going. We just had to trust our leaders. And that was, at first, I was just like, okay, I really want to know where we are. The more we went into it, though, the more trust we had to give to them, that they had our best interests in mind. And I ended up learning so much over that period of time that I can't recommend it enough. And they taught me a whole lot about all of this, but control was one of the biggest ones for me. And I ended up thinking about what controls me. I know, and then I know, like, senior year, I've been really focused on my grades. That's control a lot of what I do, as well as my academics and my friends and my relationships with those friends. Those have all had a really big impact on me, and have kind of controlled the decisions I make. But I have kind of had all of those go out of the window recently. And it's been weird, because all of the stuff that I was looking forward to as a senior has been thrown out the window. And that's kind of one of the bigger control aspects of my life that I really wanted to control. I was going to have a good senior year. I was going to have like senior assassin. We were going to do great. I was going to graduate. And then I wasn't. That was one of the biggest realizations for me. I'm not in control. I wanted a good senior year. Look where we are now. And making do with what I have, that's almost one of the biggest things you can do in a time like this. You gotta give up that control to, in this case, I have to give it up to God, because I don't have control over my life right now. I can occupy my time here by learning how to do stuff or whatnot, but I don't have control over if I'm gonna graduate or not. And I mean, I know I'm gonna get my diploma and all that, but really wanted to walk the stage, but that's something that I don't have control over. And giving that control over to God actually as I said, it's good news. And initially when I had argued with this in my head, I realized, why is this good news? And then it kind of clicked for me a little bit later on in that journey that I was on. You see, we were out there for 12 to 14-ish days, and throughout that entire experience, we saw some of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. We saw waterfalls that were just gorgeous. We saw beautiful mountaintops. I got to see like a wild goat. Like, I've never seen that before. That was sweet. But by putting my trust in my leaders, I was able to see some really cool stuff and learn some really cool lessons. And that also was an example of what the real life is going to be like. Because in the time period like this, I had to give my control over to God. But even though my senior year has been kind of thrown in the dumps, I've been able to have so much more time to learn. I've picked up my guitar again, started learning how to play that again. Couldn't say I would have been able to do that. I've picked up this new thing about skateboarding. I'm not very good yet, but I'm working on it. And never would have been able to do that with the time frame that I had before all this. And I've been able to learn a lot of cool stuff, as well as I've been able to keep in touch with my friends. I've been able to actually have more time with my family, because as bad as I thought that would have been, it's actually been pretty alright. We haven't tried to kill each other yet, and praying that doesn't change, but it's been really oddly okay. And that good news of having everything's gonna be alright, and that God has a plan. Might not be your plan, but He has a plan. That's been huge. And I know I've been talking for a little long, and I'm gonna wrap this up here, but having that difficulty come from someone you trust, let's say whether that be your teacher, your coach, the person who's in charge of you when you're out in the wilderness, heck, God. All of that, they are there for your best interests. You may not want to go work out, eat better, get this assignment done, but you're going to benefit from it in the long run. Sure, there's going to be people who don't have your best interests at heart. You can control that, however. Although God, the ultimate person in charge, He always has your best interests at heart. When I realized that, I was able to become a whole lot. I mean, it wasn't like a monumental change, like physically. I wasn't just like so much better of a person, but like I realized more what I wanted to do, and I had a better mindset going into stuff. Like, hey, I want this to happen. If it doesn't happen though, I'm okay with it. That's been so huge during this entire time of crisis, and I feel like that's just something else that I needed to let you all know about it. I just want to leave this off with a Bible verse that I think really applies to this. Luke 23 verses 44 through 47. Now, as it was about the 6th hour, and there was a darkness over all the earth until the 9th hour. Then the sun was darkened, and the veil of the temple was torn in two. And when Jesus had cried out with a loud voice, He said, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. Having said this, He breathed His last. So when the centurion saw what had happened, he glorified God, saying, Certainly this was a righteous man. And Jesus is an incredible example of someone who has been without control and has been in that kind of ultimate valley that He turned into an ultimate strength, honestly, by giving over that control to God. He gave over that control when He was on the cross, and He trusted that God would resurrect Him. He's been in that valley hoping that He comes back. He's lost friends too through his time on the earth. He's known what it's been like to have people not believe you and falsely accuse you of stuff, and then He made that way out when there didn't look like a way out. He's been in the hardest of times. He's been through challenges that we couldn't even comprehend, and yet He still gave over that control to God. And if Jesus gave His control over to God, so should you, as he has a better plan for your life than what you think you do. Anyways, that's been my talk. Thank you for listening, and see you when this quarantine lets up. Peace.